Okay, morning, geography, or might be afternoon, geography, lesson 3, week 1. We should be on Wednesday the 22nd of April, but you might be watching it on a different day if you're playing catch up. Yesterday in our workbook for geography, we looked at questions 1 and 2. Today we're going to be moving into questions 4 and 5. Question 3 was a separate part that we didn't actually need to answer a question after all. We will be needing our booklet for questions 4 and 5. But we'll also be needing our link here in our OneNote for sheet 13. So I'm just going to open that up now. So in sheet 13 we'll find information about both Vietnam and Somalia, and you're going to need that for these questions. So let's go back to our workbook and see where we're up to today. Question 3 was of course our video that we watched at the end of last lesson. Okay. Question 4 says, locate Vietnam and Somalia using an atlas and identify the countries with which they share a border. List the countries under the correct headings in the tables below. An example has been completed for you. So here we have Vietnam and Somalia. We have China and Djibouti as countries that they share a border to. You'll need an atlas. Okay. Now we don't have that in our resources. So you might need to hop on, or with mum and dad, you might need to go on to Google and you might need to search for an atlas. If you don't have one, in the event you don't have access to an atlas or you don't have access to a map, that question's going to be a little bit tricky for you. So we can move on to the next part. Question 5, and this is where we'll need sheet 13. So question 5 is here. Examine the information on sheet 13. There's a case study, it's called Somalia and Vietnam. Use the information to describe similarities and differences in the cultural characteristics of Vietnam and Somalia. Record your responses in the table below. So, here is our table where you need to put your responses. Now, remember we've done a lot of similarity and difference tables before. When we're doing these, the similarities down the centre, they will be something obviously that both share. However, when we have differences, we need to write two things that are connected to one another. For example, if I say difference in Vietnam versus Somalia, let's say, for example, I use meals. I would not put a type of dinner or a type of meal as an example, as something that is different, but then over here, talk about the cars that they drive being something different. I would put an example of a common Vietnam meal or Vietnamese meal, and I would put an example of a common Somalian meal. That way we can compare the two differences and clearly see that they are different. So make sure that when you have a difference in either box, whether it's line 1, line 2 or line 3, make sure that those differences are connected, or they are the same type of thing but a different expression of that in either country. Okay. You have the opportunity now to pause the video. Remember, we are going through this sheet, sheet 13, which has the answers there for you. You might need to do a little bit of reading and work your way through that sheet, and that will have plenty of information about things that are both different and things that are both similar. Pause the video now. Complete questions 4, if you're able to with the map, and questions 5 for me. Off you go. Okay. If you're back, we should have done question 4 and question 5. So, I'm going to show an example of how we can access a map online. Into Google, map, South East Asia. I can go into images, and I'm going to try to find a map where I can clearly see the countries that I'm concerned with. So, where is one that shows things really easily? It's a little bit hard to find at this point. And this can be the trouble sometimes. Here's one here. That might have it. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to come down here a bit further. Some of you are probably screaming through the camera at the moment. There's one! There's one, Mr. Kelsey. Where are we? That may be one. Let's go back up the top and let's use this one here. Okay, I'm going to go to the second one first because I think that had a better option to it. I'm going to expand that out a little bit. Now, let's refer back to the question and just double check and see what it said. Question here. Vietnam and Somalia. Well, Somalia is not going to be in Southeast Asia, is it? So let's do Vietnam first. Locate Vietnam and Somalia using an atlas. So I might need a second map for that. Identify the countries in which they share a border. Vietnam, China is one. Okay, so we need two more. Where are we in Chrome? We need two more countries in which Vietnam shares a border to. So we can see China is up here. We know that because it's the bigger country that is up above there. So here is Vietnam, and it's quite a long, thin country. We can see here Cambodia is a country we could put there, and Laos. Okay, Laos is the way it looks, but Laos, or Lao, is how it's pronounced. So I would choose Cambodia and Laos, and I would go back to here, I would pop it in here, and I would put Cambodia. Now, if you don't have the ability to put that into your PDF, that's okay. You can write it on your sheet, you can write it in your workbook, you can write it on a sheet of paper at home. That is okay, as long as we're able to get an answer in there for us. So we got the answer for Vietnam. We've got to check Somalia. So let's go and do the same process. Into Chrome. Let's get out of this one, and let's put a map Somalia and see how we go. Okay. So as we're looking through, we're looking for countries next to Somalia. Oh, here we can see there's Ethiopia. I wonder if we can find, oh, what have we got down here? This might give us an idea. Ethiopia and Kenya. Beautiful. And here is Djibouti. So there's our three countries, Ethiopia and Kenya. I can exit out of that now, minimize that, and I can go back and write in my here and Kenya. Can you understand what I was saying for that? I know you're missing my jokes. I'm doing my best. That's how we answer question 4. If you haven't done question 5 or you're not up to question 5, you can pause the video now. Otherwise, let's move straight into how we solve question 5. We needed sheet 13, remember, so we're into this sheet here, and we're looking to find things that are similar or different. So let's start with different categories. So the first category we can see here is languages, and for both of them, sorry. So the main language, which would be the first one, Somali in Somalia and Vietnamese, but there are other languages listed there as well. So we might be able to put as a difference primary language, because the primary language, which is the first language listed, Somali and Vietnamese, are different in the two countries. So I may go into here, I may put primary language Vietnamese, and in here I would write the same category, remember. Primary language, but that's where the difference comes in. Somali. Good. Now I'm going to go back to the same category and see if I can find a similarity, because I did spot one. Is there I just gave the answer. Is there a language you can see in there that is the same or similar? English. So what I'm going to put is I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to put both countries have English speaking people. Okay? Perfect example of a similarity within the same category. Now, if I go through, and I could think of some different categories in here as well, I could go through and look at families and communities. I could look at where people live, which is the connection here, and you'll see that the categories match up reasonably well. Okay? So use that to answer some of the rest of the questions. I'm not going to go through and provide all of these ones, because there's a huge host of those that you might be able to use. That is it for today's lesson. We have one more left in the week, so tune in tomorrow on Thursday. See you all soon.